I'm Lexi Davis, a love embodiment coach who helps people create a love that feels like home, and I'm here to bring more romance and playfulness into the world. I'm also an international retreat host, vibe curator, and human connector. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this podcast where I invite guests from around the world to sprinkle their wisdom and expand your perspective so you can create the deepest love you possibly can reach in this lifetime. I also want you to live the most joyous life, whatever that looks like to you, and I hope that this slice of the internet brings you lots of smiles and helps you keep your heart open. Thank you for choosing Heart Snuggles to be in your ears each week, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Welcome, Heart Snugglers. So happy to have you here today. I brought beautiful guest Juliet, and we're going to go a lot into the feminine essence and everything around being a mature woman. So I'm excited to share her with you. And I would love for you to just give them a little introduction about yourself.
Thank you so much, Lexi. It's such an honor for me to be here. So, I am Juliet, and my work really focuses around midwifing women to birth, like that next version of who they are, including that lush business expansion and also devotional love, but centered around their womb and their female physiology.
So good. I love all the pieces that you put together to make your work. I really resonate with everything you share. And to start, I have two questions of the podcast. So the first one is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
Okay, so what immediately came to mind was one of my mentors. I was actually going through a really difficult grief slash death slash rebirth portal. And, she doesn't work on weekends. And she literally just reached out on the weekend to say, I'm here for you. Whatever it is that you need to share, this is a safe space. And, as coaches, we obviously really honor our boundaries and our client boundaries. But it was just something where, we have a very deep and intimate mentorship. And she almost like picked up on what I was going through. And she just went that extra mile to reach out. It's such a simple little thing, but I felt really, my heart was very much touched by that.
Oh, that's exactly what we need in those moments. It's like that's what really lets us soften and, supports us through big death portals. Really hard to do by yourself. So I'm glad that,
Absolutely.
amen. Yeah. And yeah, so happy for that support. And then the second question is, what relationship belief did you have to unlearn so you could have a deeper connection with your lover?
Oh my God. Okay. That one is it's like a 30-hour chat, but um hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna say that initially I was more in the polarity space. And the polarity space, the culture is more the man is leading and he's providing and just here to receive, and we're to be devotional as Eros logos. And there's a lot of truth to that, but it can also get very flat and one-dimensional because it's never a formulaic approach to any relationship. So I was in that space for years. I was more like teaching in the more one-dimensional way, I would say. And I personally, this is in hindsight because I didn't know it at the time. I personally was more in that performative nature where I used a lot of devotional feminine teachings as strategies to get my partner to be a certain way or to do something for me. Like even at the time, my prayer to God was more very subtly along the line of, dear God, just show me who I can be and what I need to do and what version of myself do I need to step into so that, my partner can step more into his masculine leadership and all of those things. So at the time, it felt like it was the right thing to do because unconsciously, I was more seeing the devotional feminine teachings as a way for me to get something. I suppose that's kind of like the core essence of that type of belief or paradigm that I was in. And then in hindsight, I actually realized how much it was actually in that season hurting my relationship. It was a very subtle manipulation tactic that I was using. And the moment that I truly, kind of let go of that belief and at the same time step into more of a mature feminine posture where I could hold the multidimensionality of I can see that imperfect human man in front of me and at the same time also holding space and maximizing, like amplifying the potential of allowing him at his own time to step into his warrior king leadership. That was when everything started shifting. And my prayer to God also at the time recalibrated. It became more like less focused on him and just more focused on like, God, please sanctify me and allow me to be the woman and, that you envisioned me to be and allow me to step into my destiny, not just in my business and my purpose, but also in my relationship to be the most devotional and the most aligned version of a partner that I can be. And yeah, that was when everything shifted. That actually was not an overnight shift. It really took, it was quite a process, and it was like a lot of my own descent into my womb to even be able to meet and uncover certain parts that were really very much held, egoic parts that were held in my own pain body, manipulation, control, wanting to project certain things out onto my partner. And yeah, it took a lot of that descent, a lot of that inner restoration and repairing of my pain body to be able to like really like resurface and say like, oh my goodness, that was a not so mature version of me. And now this is something that I know better of. And it's something I actually see in women a lot, especially those who are pursuing a lot of the relationship and polarity courses. And we come from the best intentions, but without the nuances, it can easily turn into more of a manipulation strategy.
Yeah, and it's so subtle that it's hard to catch it, and you
Yeah.
probably don't even sense it yourself. However, like with my man, when I tried any of that, like he would always reflect it back to me, not directly saying I'm manipulating, but just his energy, and I would be confused. And, it takes time to realize, like, oh, I am actually trying to manipulate here. It's funny because, so often it's like men are manipulators, and we're just projecting a lot when we can actually look at like maybe we're also subtly manipulating too, it's just not as obvious. So
Mhm.
it's a
Yeah.
amazing belief that you brought up, behavior you shifted.
Yeah, it was more of a, not so much outwardly manipulation, but it was more like coming from that transactional
Mhm.
paradigm of if I can just devote more, if I can just force myself to surrender more, then it's going to change him. But at the end of the day, that's not coming from that relational intimacy. It is still a transactional thing. Whereas if I do this, I'm expecting that he's going to do X, Y, and Z. So,
Yeah, that entitlement piece steps in too.
yeah.
That's just
Absolutely.
not good. So many things to say. But first, I'd love to like understand how you got deeply into this like womb specific work and into the mature feminine.
Yeah, great question. So for me, it was actually not something that I thought I would ever deepen into. So back to years ago, I was experiencing, at the time, I was actually having very difficult cycles every single month. My cycle was super short, and I would go through like a week to 10 days of extreme bloat and pain and just irritability. Basically, my luteal time was very much elongated, but then my cycle itself was really short. It would come on like day 20, 21. So my entire cycle, I used to joke like I would only have, I don't know, a week of good days. So back then I was really searching. I didn't know what to do and I had no idea what was causing it. And I kept on praying to God. The voice that came through so clearly from God was, you need to deepen into your womb.
Mm.
That was an order, not an order, very loving instruction that I received. So I started deepening into the womb with the expectation that I was going to heal. Just balance my hormones, heal my cycle, no biggie. And what I didn't realize was that this actually, the womb for me actually served as that central piece. It's almost like the epicenter of my evolution. And from what I've witnessed and experienced and guided women through, it's actually very much the mother organ that is so central to a woman's, I'm not just talking about well-being, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, fertileness, but also the womb very much serves as a centerpiece in our evolution and awakening. So the more it is that I deepen into my womb, the more that I was able to meet a lot of the parts of myself, the younger versions of me, the more wounded versions of me, the different faces of Juliet that didn't want to be shown in public or even with myself, but got kept away and hidden away in the dark in the underworld. And for women, our underworld is very much below the waist, the place where no one sees, except for ourselves and our partners. So I was able to uncover so many pieces of myself that were lost to me. And in that process, I began realizing that my PMS and the shortened cycle and the pain and the bloating, all of the symptoms that I experienced were simply my womb's way of calling me back into her, into like this origin and home of my woman to really meet the essence of who I am. And then to be able to devote to be her guardian and to mobilize the tissues to really witness how much I was able to open up and allow the life, more like life force, to circulate through me. So that was years ago. That was what got me started on this journey. Fast forward to today, actually, my PMS has been healed. The cycle is back to normal. And yeah, my womb has really brought me so much closer just to me, the woman that I'm meant to be, and also brought me closer to my partner and to God. So it's been a really beautiful journey in a nutshell.
That's amazing that you've been able to come so far and, keep believing because I mean, now I just hear everyone has womb problems and, cycle problems. And it's so normalized when that's not how our wombs should be feeling and functioning. So I always love hearing stories of there's a way through it. And I'm curious if someone is, dealing with a lot of issues in their womb, what's a way that they can start connecting and, yeah, bringing more peace to her.
Yeah, I would say that first to acknowledge the culture that we're in, the modern day culture, we're actually programmed to be so severed from our wombs. This is not something that back in the day when we went to high school or college, this was not something that was ever brought up once. I mean, yes, maybe we took like one class of sex ed, like how to use condoms and have safe sex, but that's the extent of any kind of education along that line that younger women are offered. So to even acknowledge that we live in a world that almost has forgotten
Mm.
about this one place where the entire humanity has come from, this cradle of life, and to even acknowledge that there's a severance that not only lives in the collective, but also lives inside of us, lives inside of our tissues and our own flesh. And with this acknowledgement, we can then come back to ourselves and say, like, how do you, and ask our wombs, how do you want me to connect with you? What are some of the things that I need to unlearn? What I've noticed is that for women, initially, there's a lot to be unlearned. There's the whatever misaligned misinformation or disinformation that we received from the world about the womb, that this is just the uterus, it's a place for you to produce babies. That's it. It's made for procreation, and you're gonna have your period once a month. But the womb, the human, I would say the organ, the physical and energetic organ, goes so much beyond procreation. It literally is like very much the embodiment of feminine creational coding. She is what allows us to receive, to multiply, and to birth masculine light in every way possible, not just babies, but also ideas, artistic expressions, projects, relationships, paradigms. We birth the world, we birth matter into this matrix through our wombs.
Mm.
So to even acknowledge that, oh my goodness, I'm the guardian of such an important vessel, and I have no idea, even who she is and what she's capable of So to first acknowledge all of these things, acknowledge the severance, and then to start, for me, I feel like a really tangible way for women to start to even communicate with their wombs is through their cycle if they're in their bleeding years. Because our cycle very much is an indicator of not just our physical health, but actually our relational health,
Mm.
our relationship with men, with God, with life itself, with our bodies, with the vital state of our tissues, with our blood. So that's a really tangible way to start deepening into the language of our womb. Usually for women who are more severed from their wombs, common symptoms are usually around menstruation time, PMS, bloating, irregular bleed, irregular cycles, endometriosis, and they're the more severe ones, endometriosis, fibroids, adenomyosis. Any kind of pain or growth in the womb is quite literally our feminine pain body, manifesting itself and saying to us, like, pay attention to me. It's time to get into your body. It's time to get into your tissues. It's time to actually be in communion with me and support me. So menstruation time is a really big one for women. I would also add that ovulation time is a pretty big one for women as well. Just because during menstruation and ovulation, these are the two times in a month where our cervix is actually open. So during menstruation, the cervix is actually in like a downward spinning motion, but during ovulation, it actually goes up. The energy is shooting up and she's opening up into the heart, into the throat. So if we're severed from our wombs, ovulation isn't necessary. That's one of the reasons actually why I don't do cycle syncing, because the female body is not something that we can biohack. A lot of the cycle syncing teachings say, during ovulation, you're supposed to be feeling sexy, magnetic, confident, you're networking. It might be so, but from working with women, I know like for a lot of women, ovulation is actually a pretty challenging window, about, 5 to 7 day window, because this is when our estrogen dominance, which is super, super common in women, actually the estrogen starts to peak during ovulation. So if we haven't been the devoted guardians to our bodies, and if there's any kind of imbalances in our hormonal matrix, which is so common in today's world, then during ovulation, there's usually like insomnia, irritability, feeling like sometimes we're having verbal diarrhea because of the shooting of energy that's coming into our throat. It's a lot of energy to hold when the cervix is open. So definitely pay attention to these two times in the month when our cervix is open, and also late luteal is a very good indicator as to where we are with our wombs. Because usually, whenever we have any kind of fragmented relationship with our own hormones and tissues and bleed and organs, it usually shows during the second half of our cycle, which is between ovulation to menstruation. So I feel like becoming really aware of our bleed, not from a robotic perspective, but actually checking in with ourselves every single day in terms of how am I feeling today? What's my energy level like? What's showing up in my body right now? What is alive to me? What are some of the things that I'm feeling uncomfortable with? Tracking every single day for at least 3 cycles and actually journaling would give us so much insight as to, how rooted we are in our wombs, in the womb consciousness, and what are some of the invitations that our wombs are trying to scream at us that we've been neglecting.
Yeah, I love that you made it more real too, because as something gets popularized in our society, it's like there's this, and this, the cycle syncing, right? So I think that's a really important part. And even just my own experience, I got a cycle journal, which has been more better for me to write it on paper. And I noticed just yesterday, I told my partner the same day for the last like 4 cycles, I've shut down with him. And it's the same exact day my period. And I was so fascinated. I was like, okay, there's something happening here, and the womb is just so intelligent. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. She is truly the mother organ because she is the organ that mothers, that feeds and nourishes the newborn or the new life that we're nourishing inside of ourselves. So for me, that's very much like this organ is this inner compass. And this is not to say that this is the only place in a woman that we need to pay attention to, because the womb actually works in conjunction with the vitality and the mobility of our yoni, outer and inner yoni, and also very much our belly, our heart, our throat. All of these are our central channels. So usually if the womb feels stagnant or cluttered or like very much severed from our consciousness, then it very much actually stagnates the flow within us, within all of these central channels, which are, super, like it's really crucial. These channels are crucial for our creational potency. We cannot create. Our words actually lose power because, when the womb is more stagnant, just because when our root is not in her most vital and potent state, whatever we speak, we can't really back it up from the root up. So there's like a lack of resonance when we speak. That's why it's not just the womb, but she's more like the mother organ, and then everything works in conjunction with one another.
So good. And I also just want to mention that I love how you talked about the pain as an invitation, because that's another thing that I find our society has so backward. It's like pain as an invitation to numb instead of actually get more curious and go inwards. So I think that's beautiful. And especially around the womb, there's a lot there. But I
Yeah.
want to like move direction just a little bit and talk about how when you actually are embodied and initiated in your womb and in your feminine, how this shifts your relationship with your man.
Yeah, well, this is a really huge topic. So, okay, so I'm gonna feel into the layers. The way that I see a woman's walk with her womb is that how we walk with the womb, which is this internal point of orientation, is actually mirrored back to us in all of our external relationships. Meaning how we walk the womb with this with this very sacred devoted organ that is in this unconditionally loving contract with us. How we walk with her is actually how we walk with everything else, with our men, with our business, with our purpose, with God, with money. Any kind of degree of severance with the womb is actually mirrored back to us. That's why the masculine is always the best and sometimes the most brutally clearest mirror that we can have.
Mm.
So when a woman is embodied in her womb, and again, this is not, there's like no end goal to this. There's no like one look as to like, okay, so today she's not, but then if she does these 7 steps, then hopefully in 3 months she's fully embodied.
Yeah.
It's actually very much a lifelong walk.
Mhm.
So no ending and no completion. So I'm only speaking from my own journey of embodiment wherever I am with my womb. There's a level of intimacy that's it's so viscerally felt and embodied by a woman who is intimate with her womb. Just because she is, rather than being like a woman who is programmed by the rat race disembodied world, she is actually very much returned to her original design. That is the feminine essence of who she is. And to me, the feminine is Eros, except I don't necessarily see Eros as only passion, romance. Eros actually means intimacy to me. So a woman in her original God design is intimate in every single way. It's the stark opposite of what I shared earlier, that we're in that transactional relationship with our men because we believe that just by, shoving a whole bunch of devotional feminine courses down our throats, we get to use certain knowledge and, tactics to get our men to be a certain way. That is transactional versus when we're truly intimate, first with ourselves, with our bleeds, with our tissues, with our mother organ and how she is metamorphosizing throughout the entire month, throughout our cycle, with every single part of us, then we embody this intimacy and it allows a certain texture and feeling that we can then bring into our relationship that is otherwise missing. So it's not a super tangible thing, but for the feminine, it's never that we need to outwardly do something in order to produce a certain result. It's more the embodiment, this non-linear embodiment, that a resonance that I'm bringing into the relationship. Because I can be vulnerable with myself, I can meet and hold the parts of me that are probably, my 3-year-old and 5-year-old and 7-year-old that are more like, in their little temper tantrums that are being very human. But at the same time, because I'm in my womb and the womb is a holder of potentiality, like she is able to walk in a more multidimensional timeline in which she can both hold the potential of a seed as well as a human 9 months later. Like she's got all of that potential. So because I'm like embodied in that potentiality, I'm also able to hold the parts of me that are not perfect, that are ugly, that I don't want to see, and be intimate with those parts. And because I have this capacity, I'm able to bring this intimate capacity into my relationship where I get to honor that he is a human man. He has his flaws. He comes in with his own baggage. He makes mistakes. And at the same time, I can see not just like forcefully as a, way to sound good, but I can truly like hold that spaciousness for him to also be able to see his own potential and step into that. So it's very much like it's an increased somatic capacity to be with all parts of me, all versions of me, while holding that highest resonance and then bringing that into the relationship. And all of that requires that very raw vulnerability and intimacy with myself. I need to be able to descend into my own darkness, into my own shadows, and rise up, bringing that wisdom with me in order to then be able to contribute that to my relationship.
Yes, I love this so much. And like you said, it's a felt sense thing. It's rarely
Yeah.
something you can just notice. And it's something you'll notice
Mhm.
in yourself and in another woman. And then your partner, they're so sensitive to our energy, so they can as well feel that intensely. And I'm curious of how do you share with your woman the difference of like you bringing something that your partner is mirroring and it's like, okay, this is something for you to look at versus this is him and his own triggers or yeah.
Yeah, there's never like a 100% foolproof way, just because I feel relationship dynamics are so, so, so fluid. But I would say whenever we're in an intimate relationship, given that we really know the person, usually we are pretty clear on what each other's weaknesses and shortcomings are. And again, I'm bringing the responsibility back to myself, to the feminine, because I'm the only one that I can be a mastery of. I cannot be a mastery of him. So when it comes to myself, the more it is that I can actually go into my tissues, because a lot of these, I'm going to say a lot of our wounding and traumatic imprints are very much held inside of the tissues. And over time, they become, when we actually do hands-on work on our yonis and on our wombs and our bellies, the tissues that have held on to a lot of trauma, that have not allowed emotions to come into their completion with the body, over time, the tissues actually feel tense, they feel dehydrated, or there's like pain, there is inflammation, there's a little bit of that dryness and fibrous feeling. Versus, if we're not constantly numbing, if we're truly in our felt senses and we are in our capacity to feel and to mobilize between the different states, from the very crappy states that we feel as human beings to the, ecstatic joy that we feel. The tissues are a lot more mobile and they feel hydrated and they're soft touch. So for us, whenever it is that I am not sure, why is this coming up? Is it me? Is it him in a relationship? I always like to come back into myself and do the hands-on work and really root into my own body and tissues and pelvic bowl and just feel into what's something there that I haven't felt. And it's not to say like it's a linear, like I'm gonna shift this and then he's gonna shift that. But whenever we're not sure, it's kind of like coming from both of us because usually we know each other so well that if it's just purely his thing, I would know it right away. But if I'm in a space of like, I'm not sure if it's him, it's me, then I like to take some of the responsibility and say, like, let me just feel into a layer of myself that I haven't felt. And then I'm going to see what shifts in me and how can I come into our conversation or our dynamics and bring a little bit of that recalibrated frequency in. And then I'm curious as to what's going to happen. So there's like no 100% proof way, just because a lot of the times it might be something in us that he's responding to, or it's something that is coming up in him. But then we are, instead of kind of like holding that spaciousness or drawing a boundary, right, whichever is the thing at the moment, we're reacting to his, whatever is coming up to him. And then it becomes a little bit convoluted. So it's really hard to say like, oh, it's 50% me, 50% him, but maybe it's 80% me and 20% him, or vice versa. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm not going to try to control him. Obviously, it doesn't mean that we don't have more serious discussions, but it's always like, I need a moment and I need to come back to my body. I need to come into my inner compass. And I just need to feel into all of this and see if I can bring a new energy into whatever has risen between us.
My love, you've built a life, you've built the career, you've built the success, but when it comes to love and softening and receiving, you're always the one in control, always thinking, planning, and doing. What if you didn't have to? Soft Girl Season is your invitation to melt into life where you feel safe, supported, and adored, where you actually can trust men, trust God, and trust yourself. Inside, women have found their dream partners, started receiving clients with less effort, and watched their men step up to pamper, cherish, and adore them, all by learning how to soften into their feminine energy. They've gone from feeling numb and guarded to magnetic, deeply loved, and radiant. So if you're ready to stop over-functioning and start being treated like a queen, come inside Soft Girl Season and let yourself be the woman who has it all. Join us using the link in the show notes and receive instant access and start being provided for by God and men. I agree entirely. Like that pause of creating the space to feel like what is true for you and in your body, like somatically happening, is so important because in my relationship, anytime I haven't taken that, it's just like you're in a reactive state. No peace and resolution really comes until that pause has been taken for me. And so I really agree with this. And another piece you said is like, okay, then you bring it to him. So that's another whole art form in itself, is the feminine communication, so that he can actually hear you without shutting down. So how do you bring that softness via communication?
Yeah, so in my experience, I feel that our men, the most effective feminine communication is our feelability. So words do matter, but words can only reach a man so much. He actually needs to feel us in order to receive us. And this is when earlier I mentioned a little bit about our cervix and how the cervix, heart, and throat literally kind of like they work in this one like axis, this one pathway, just because when we in utero, our womb and our throat, the jaw and everything, were very much developed from like one membrane. So there is this very beautiful connection between the throat and the womb, in which a lot of the times, if a woman has a lot of tension in her jaw and she's constantly clenching her teeth, 9 out of 10 times, her pelvis is actually super tight. And the same, if we hold a lot of trauma, stagnancy in the pelvis, it feels very, very tight here. So we can actually be the most effective communicator in terms of just having learned all of the couple's communication strategies and being able to find super clear words to communicate. But if there is a disconnect between the womb, the heart, and the throat, and if we're just like talking from above the neck, then the penetrability of our communication greatly diminishes because the man is actually, he's hearing you, but he's not feeling you and he's not able to receive you. It's the feminine for me is not meant to meet the masculine on the mental plane.
Mhm.
That's like where he's bonding with his buddies and, talking about cars and cigars and watches. The feminine, the reason why we are the reflection of God's heart and we are this embodiment of intimacy is because we offer something so, so, so different to the masculine that he is unable to manufacture within himself, that he actually needs to receive from us. And that is our feelability. And I've noticed this in my relationship over and over, where sometimes I'm talking, like, babe, how come you're not paying attention? And it's because I'm like, oh, if I do a little check-in, I'm just yapping, but I'm actually not rooted in my body. I'm not rooted in my heart. I'm not letting that, like, there is a certain, like, vibrational tone and precision that can only be communicated by the feminine when she is very much rooted in her cervix and womb, because all of that root power then comes up more like a creational frequency. It actually comes up, goes through our belly, all the way into our heart. And then when we speak, those words land much more deeply and they penetrate much more deeply. A different type of penetration than masculine penetration, but there is the depth and richness of that resonance and a tone that it would get his attention right away. And this is especially important when a couple tends to misunderstand each other a lot, or like when you are going through like a growth portal and there's like the inevitable, conflicts and arguments. I find for women, the past version of me included, a lot of the times we would just get angry and defensive. And the moment that we get defensive, we're actually projecting all of that onto him and at the same time unconsciously erecting a lot of walls, around ourselves. We literally shut down our womb and our heart. And that communication then becomes really ineffective. Meaning that you can dump your anger out on him. You can say how much his words or his actions have, like made you feel hurt, but it's not penetrating deep enough where he can actually receive you versus be in that moment, be fully in your body, in with the emotions, having the capacity to actually feel the sensations and the rawness of the emotions, which for a lot of women is difficult to do
Mhm.
because it's a high voltage type of sensation where cultivate the nervous system capacity to actually feel and hold yourself in that without collapsing or projecting. And it being in that state, but totally stripped down in the bare version of who you are and like the rawness of your emotions, not projecting anger, but allowing him to see how much you're hurt. Like that undefended, very much stripped down raw state is truly I would say, like the most powerful feminine communication, because then you're actually inviting him into that resonance field where he can actually feel how you're feeling and then you're able to communicate. So words do matter because words convey the clarity, but that vibrational potency and power and precision comes from the body. It comes from our roots.
Yes. Yep. I love this so much because, again, in my relationship, same thing. My man will tell me, he's like, I can't feel you. He'll say that sometimes. Or afterwards, after a little conflict or whatever, he'll say, I wasn't able to feel you. And again, like in those moments, now that I have more awareness, I can see how he's being my mirror is how well I'm embodied in myself. So I love that, like, the more that you are able to develop just the knowledge within yourself and also experience, because when you have the experience of it really landing and you penetrating him, it's completely different than the defensive version of your man. You can know that, like, oh, wait, maybe I do have some control in this versus just saying, my man is always defensive and it's all his fault, instead of being like, maybe I have some responsibility in how I'm communicating this. And in that, it completely shifts how your man responds. Yeah.
Yeah, I find usually when they get defensive, and again, we're talking within the context of a committed relationship where both of you care about each other. So I find usually when he gets defensive, we're actually unconsciously dumping something on him that we're not even aware of.
Hmm.
But the masculine, even if he's unable to communicate, like, I can't feel you, he actually just feels very rejected by the feminine. And the deepest desire for the masculine is actually to penetrate her, not just physically, but energetically, penetrate her and received by her. So there's that moment of rejection that could also cause him to, like, get defensive and get like a little bit rough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love the energy piece of it too, because I mean, again, in my relationship, he's always like, I love when, are fully receiving me. And I mean, he might not use that exact language, but it's just like he can feel the difference. And as someone who historically didn't want to receive men, just thinking, like as a defense mechanism, it feels so good to allow that in and to have that relationship of like, I get to fully be penetrated. So.
Yeah.
I really love that. And I would love to also for you to share about how we can start to inspire our man more and inspire so-called the kingdom and help to really build that. Because in my relationship now, I've never seen a man like, switch on so quickly to build our life together. And it's just so beautiful. So I know that doesn't just happen by accident. So yeah, I would love for you to share more on that.
Yeah, so for me, in my journey, I've come to realize that for the feminine, whenever we are in that co-creation with the masculine, there are actually 2 points of orientation for us. One is our relationship with the feminine, and one is our relationship with the masculine. And anytime when something gets super abstract, I'm just going to come back to the body. Well, for the human body, in order for us to create new life, the man and the woman need to come together. The sperm and the egg need to come together in union, and then the union produces the third synergetic, child of the offspring of the union. So that's the new creation. So anytime our reality, this matrix is actually written in the same energetic codes, whereas the masculine and the feminine need to come together in order to birth a new reality. So our relationship or the feminine, our primal relationship with the body, with our animal body, with our emotions, with our womb and her creational power, her creational range, really understanding how she gestates, how she receives, gestates masculine light, and how she births energetically. Our relationship with the feminine, with mother, with earth, all of these things very much, shape how much we hold that feminine within us, how much we hold that feminine creational power within us. Some of it is even like the more tangible pieces for me. For like over a year and a half was actually healing a lot of the ancestral trauma that's in my maternal lineage, because again, like we were once an egg inside of our grandmother, well, inside of our mother's ovaries, inside of our grandmother's, pelvic bowl. So we were literally inside of our grandmother. A lot of the stuff, especially for previous generations, a lot of the women did not have the opportunity to choose or to get out of survival mode or to, speak their truth or to have the love that they wanted, because they needed to choose survival and provision. So a lot of that stuff epigenetically is inside of us.
Mhm.
And healing our relationship with the feminine, really, for me, the moment I got into, like, I deepened into my womb, all of those things became very much alive. And I needed to just like restore layer by layer, healing my relationship with my, with women that have come before me, with my mother, my sister, with my body, with my womb, with my bleed, all of those things. And the other or like point of orientation is actually our relationship with the masculine.
Yeah.
So that the first thing that I usually guide women to is actually our relationship with God. So for me, I'm a Christ follower, and I come to God as He is my Father and He is my beloved. That we can go to God not as a religious figure, but as this triune God who is in intimate, deep relationship with us, where we can be the daughter, where we can be the beloved, and just be able to repair that relationship before we even repair our relationship with men and the masculine. Just because a lot of us will say, like, our father was our first man. So a lot of women do carry that father wound. And that father wound, if not healed, is then carried into our relationship with our partners and husbands. But to even go before that, there was this primordial union with God, with as the highest masculine. There's that union that comes even way before our relationship with our Father. So I always like to see God as the first highest masculine that we're in union with. And as we're repairing that relationship, we actually start to show up very differently in our relationship with the Father, with our own biological father, and with our men. So, being able to actually simultaneously repair both our relationship with the masculine and both our relationship with the feminine actually allows us to then come into union, and we can approach our men very differently. We talked about the piece with the womb, where when a woman is in her rite of passage of coming deeper into her womb, she's able to bring that level of intimacy and rawness and feelability into her relationship. And the more it is that she is in her natural, organic, essence, like her original design, that state, the more it actually inspires our men to rise and to, be the provider and be the masculine leader, because something inside of him gets evoked and he wants to be that king and that warrior and that protector for you, versus a woman who's not feelable, who's all armored up and defensive. It does not inspire a man to be a greater version of himself for that, just because he can't even feel her. He can't feel her enough to want to fully cherish her. So for me, like, that's super important. And for a woman, when we hear our relationship with God, it adds another layer of intimacy to our own embodiment that kind of like works intimately with our relationship with the womb. It just allows us to be even more vulnerable and authentic. And then we can bring like that essence into our relationship. So it's not two separate things, repairing your relationship with the feminine, repairing your relationship with masculine, more like they're interwoven with one another. That as we are like kind of like navigating one, we're automatically navigating the other.
Yep.
Because as we're, let's say, working on relationship intimacy, we're automatically navigating our own relationship with our body, with our sexuality. As we're getting closer to God and repairing some of that religious trauma or some of that father wounding, we're able to trust the masculine more and trust God's plan more. And we're bringing that trust and that safety into our relationship with our men. So all of these pieces work in a very holistic way, like in an ecosystem where as you're shifting one, you're actually recalibrating everything else. And it's like there's no one way,
Yeah.
but it's like touching all of these pieces within that ecosystem.
That's it. That was it for me. Like as soon as it started with God, like really when I truly built that one-to-one relationship with him, that intimate relationship with him, it just started raveling so much and with men and my body and myself and my lineage. So it's beautiful when you can just be guided by God and feel into how he's shaping your character and how he knows how to do everything in perfect timing. So it's just
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely. I mean, for me, this journey actually started with my relationship with God. I didn't set out and say, okay, today I'm going to heal my womb. Tomorrow I'm going to improve my relationship. It actually really started with God back to like 5 years ago when I started just deepening into that one-on-one personal intimate relationship. And he was the one who instructed me to like, okay, you need to deepen into your body, you need to hear your womb. Or like here, he would actually reflect back to me the places in my relationship where I'm still holding back, where I'm not allowing myself to be felt, where I'm like holding on to my guard and defenses out of pride, really. So it's that relationship truly for me catalyzed everything else.
Mm.
And yeah, and like the way that I like to look at the feminine is that we're always like in this spiral of consciousness as we're evolving and awakening. And that spiral is in such a way that it's like circular. So the moment you actually touch one relationship, that relationship becomes like this point of access that allows God's light and God's truth to start working in and touching all of the other pieces along the same spiral. And it just like recalibrates everything within that spiral. And then we just keep spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. That's why for me, it's like it feels like there's so many layers. And every time when I deepen into one layer, everything shifts. My personal relationship, my relationship with my money, my purpose, my business, my feelability, not just in my relationship, but also, like on social media, the way that I speak to my clients or speak to the world, everything shifts. And it's a really, really beautiful, very, very holistic way of walking with God and walking with our men
Yeah.
and our bodies.
Yes, it's so beautiful. And I'm just so grateful that we're in a time where we can tap into the depth into our true power, which is, going in and down and with God. And it's just so different from when I was heavily in the new age spirituality, how, yeah, it just was completely different and not as the safety that I feel and the security and the ability to trust at the depth I'm able to trust is the most nourishing thing for my feminine body.
Yeah. Well, I was in the new age space too. There was a lot of fluff that came in very pretty and, glittering packaging, but like the core of new age is a very transactional experience as opposed to like a very, really relational experience. For me, I was like really big on teaching manifestation and doing this for some of my clients. They were really big on tantra and sex magic. But at the end of the day, like we're exploiting something, ourselves, our relationship, our life force in order to get something. So for me, like the biggest difference, so many, I mean, there are so many, but one of the biggest differences is that we truly come back into the primordial imprint of who God designed the feminine to be. Someone who is very intimate, who is very feelable, as opposed to like out there trading, let me do this, hopefully I can get that. And that's like, yeah, it's truly life-changing.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. Even when I met my man, I had still some ideas in my head of like, no, he needs to be this and this and this. And he's like, you need to like he like really grounded me. He's like, I am a man and like not everything is like you've seen or read about or learned about. Like I'm physically here and you're not perfect either. And it just really like grounded me to like, oh yeah, we are two humans and I get to love you and and you get to do the same. And it's just yeah, it's so much better than being like, well, I'm this, so I deserve that, and this like very,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a young feminine mentality that has a lot of that young maiden wounds and also the lover wounding, and again, this is why God is so important because the maiden wounds are truly repaired when we restore our relationship with the Father. And the lover wound is with beloved, with Christ. Because for as long as we're carrying the young maiden wounds, we're really I mean, we can say that on the surface, it looks like control, manipulation, and entitlement. But truthfully, the young maiden, the little girl inside of us, she just does not feel safe.
Yeah.
She's coming from a place of fear of like, I need to look after myself because no one's here. No one's here for me.
Mhm.
So when you like boil it down, it's that fear and that safety that you just named
Mhm.
that only can come from relationship. It
Mhm.
can come from trading. It can come from like, I'm here playing goddess, the one that's in the center of the universe, all of these things that comes from relationship. And there's a really beautiful invitation of growth for the women who are still in that space, which is like there's that layer of feminine maturation to be able to actually acknowledge your very potent creational power inside of your womb, inside of your circuitries of your womb, your heart, your throat, but at the same time to also be able to acknowledge that with great power comes great responsibility. And that responsibility is that maturation of maiden and lover, and being able to kind of like allow ourselves to cultivate the capacity to be able to hold certain wounded parts of us, not to turn away, but to like be able to hold them and meet them exactly where they are. And at the end of the day, not choosing from those wounded voices, but choosing from more of that maternal resonance. And I don't mean like being a mother necessarily, but it is the mother who actually births. So we do have the archetype of the mother, and we experience that archetype once a month, and there is that wise woman inside of us, which we also experience once a month in Lutio in menstruation. So our physiology already offers that beautiful feminine blueprint for us to experience all of these codings within these different archetypes. And it's just about allowing us to, come into that more mature posture of not abandoning the maiden, but being able to also hold her in a way that feels very multidimensional. And at the same time, bring that more of that maturity into our relationships. And yeah, it doesn't mean to kill the maiden, because I think a lot of women are more like thinking like, I don't ever want to lose the maiden innocence. And it's actually not true, because as we journey through feminine maturation and go through all of these rites of passages, it actually in all four archetypes that we carry. So because there's the expression of all three in each one. So as we actually mature more into the embodied maternal resonance as a woman who's able to consciously birth realities and relationships that are aligned with her heart, with her womb, and as we're able to call on the wise woman inside of us, our maiden, rather than being in her wounded expression, can actually have that internal safety to be in her joy, in her innocence, in her playfulness, in that delight of just being the little girl, which is so needed in our relationship too. Because sometimes we just want to be that little girl, in front of our men in a relationship. So it's not about killing her, but developing that capacity and safety and spaciousness to allow her to be in the true safety of her true expression, which is not the wounded expression, but her innocence.
Yes, I think this is so nice because sometimes, at least in the self-development world, we think that we have to like, push all that away or make it go away. And really it's like, no, that's the piece. That's where it started. So I love that yeah, and it never goes away, no matter how much work you've done or whatever. It's those parts still come up in so many different moments. So the ability, like you said, to hold it is what we really are going towards versus it needing to be completely transformed and different and perfect. It's like, yeah, can we just be with that part?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why I feel like it's the first step is for women to actually unlearn a very linear, flat programming. None of this work is actually linear. And this is, again, another gift that's offered by the womb. The more it is that you journey into her, the more you realize that it's a continuum. Our fertility, our womb care, it's actually very much a continuum that operates in a cyclical, nonlinear fashion. So I've had women, clients who say to me, well, I'm not sure if I want to like, mature into my wise woman, because that means I'm losing my maiden, but you're never losing anything. Just the fact that in your cycle, you actually go through the essence of each one, follicular is very much like the maiden, and the outer is very much in menstruation. You actually go through each one, but you're spiraling deeper. And as you're calling on that more mature and wise part of you, that part of you has that capacity to be able to not just hold, but actually enrich the maiden and to bring her out even more. so that your wisdom is infused with your playfulness, with your innocence, with your, erotic expression. And it just becomes more like the breath in and breath out. It's just a continuous cyclical type of movement where you can be all four at once and not be like, okay, I'm here, or I need to be the adult now, or like I can't be, the playful maiden. You're actually all of it all at once, but you actually get a choice. You get to say, like, whose voice is needed here? How am I going to penetrate, allow my voice to penetrate? In this, I don't know, in this conflict that I'm having with my man, or when I'm writing a message on social media, versus just being unconsciously in a more wounded maiden expression that's a little bit stunted in her growth, because a lot of that is very unconscious until we do this work. So it really does come back to choice, but that choice is that deepening.
Yeah. Yes. I like the visualization of how it is like cyclical. It was just so hard for me when I felt it was linear, because then I was like, then I'm going backwards, and then this and this, and I get back in my head instead of realizing, no, like it's always going to be all of this. And you're right, it's that choice. So the more awareness you have of all these different pieces, you can start to choose which one you want instead of just becoming the embodiment of
Yeah.
like maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just taught a lesson in my group where trauma is, I can give like a ton of definitions to trauma, but at the end of the day, it's your body feeling like it didn't have a choice because something happens too quickly, too fast, too much, too soon. So you did not have a choice. Restoration is creating that breath, creating that spaciousness, creating that capacity within so that you have a choice, and not just mentally, so that your tissues, this is why I teach women hands-on work in the pelvis, so that your tissues can breathe with you. Your tissues can remember that they have a choice as well. And that's like embodiment, down to the cellular level, in which we actually remember that we have that sovereign agency and we can choose. And that's terribly important, just because a lot of us were programmed to run our businesses and our money and navigate our relationships from a place of no choice. We have so many default patterns of numbing, of not feeling, of distracting ourselves, of disassociation, that we are on that autopilot all day long. And these patterns are actually running us versus actually like, ooh, I have a choice here. I can take a pause. I don't have to react to him. And I can give myself a little grace and a little bit spaciousness to just feel what's present in me. And then I'm going to bring a little bit of that new energy and that breath into my relationship with him.
So beautiful. I mean, that's one for me, one of the biggest pieces was realizing I had choice again. And now with my clients, I remember one of my clients the other day, she's like, wow, now that I'm not in survival mode, I get to just feel the pleasure of my walk and like, just I have spaciousness to actually enjoy life. And so it shows up in so many ways, this moving through those pieces. But yeah, the choice aspect is so big because survival mode, you're really there's such a laser focus. So
Yeah, yeah. And we oftentimes don't know it. Even if you look at, like, let's get super nerdy in the polyvagal theory, survival mode is like you're in the unconscious freeze, the unconscious fight or flight, versus like it being in the social engagement, state. We're actually conscious. We have a choice. We're mobilized from the inside out. And then we can say, okay, this doesn't work for me, but I can allow myself to choose another path. And it's really hard to feel pleasure, joy, ease, peace, libido, any of those, all of the good things when we're in that survival mode, when we're like stuck in freeze or like fight or flight. It's just the nervous system doesn't have the energy for us to feel pleasure and joy in life because we're kind of like in that energy conservation mode. So even that, like physiologically, our body like literally offers the blueprint for everything that we're wanting to birth.
yes, exactly what you were saying too. You can physically feel the tension that is there too as you're going into this, and all of the trauma is stored in our tissues. So I love that you incorporate the two. But this has been a beautiful conversation. And I just want to wrap up with the last question of the podcast, which is what is one or two of your favorite romantic memories?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, I have so many. Okay, so when I first met my partner, that was 12 years ago, I believe, yeah, 12 and a half years ago. I was really jaded. I was in my young feminine back then, so I kind of operated from my very unconscious maiden wounds. And I was on the dating market so much that I just got to a point that I didn't want to do it anymore. But I was still like on some like two dating sites, I believe. And it became like a full-time job where sometimes I would schedule 2, 3 dates in one day where I would meet one guy for lunch, another guy for like afternoon tea, and another guy for drinks at night. And I don't recommend that, but I was young. So when he reached out to me from the site, my first reaction was like, oh, he's so different. Like he's not, talking about how much his favorite movie is The Hangover back in the day, how many stamps he's got on his passport, usual stuff that I saw a lot from men. But he took an interest in me and in conversation. And our first date, I remember at the time he did not have a car. He actually we lived in New York City back then. He rented a car. It was called like Zip Car or something, where you can rent for several hours. He rented a car. He picked me up. He brought me flowers, brought me to a beautiful Spanish restaurant downtown Manhattan. And afterwards, we just walked in the rain and talked for hours. And then the second date, he remembered that I mentioned I love cherries and I love flowers, brought me more flowers and cherries.
Mm.
So it was so romantic for me because at the time my heart was a little bitter and a little brittle and a little hardened. And I just wanted to like hide away from the world, especially the dating world. And there he was, just showing up, like remembering everything that I named and like just wasn't trying to get anything from me other than just wanted to get to know me and take an interest in my life and appreciated like who I was at the time, even though I don't think I fully appreciated myself. So, throughout the years, like he's the one who's actually helped me heal a lot of my own father and wounds with the masculine. So I probably named a whole bunch of things, but the memory was like just walking in the rain after our first date, after like Spanish food. Yeah, and feeling like, oh, finally, like I met the one.
Oh, yay, I love this. So cute.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really like very, very sweet.
Yeah, and you feel the difference of a man, it's like a completely different texture of
Yeah,
you'll know as a woman if you haven't already experienced that.
absolutely.
Supposed to be with a man like that. So thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. And in case people want to work with you, what are you offering and where can they find you?
So I do everything that I just named is in my 1 year program called Feminine Codex. It's literally a midwifing type of immersion. I walk women through into the depth of their wombs and all of the central channels of womb, belly, heart, throat, and crown to recalibrate from the inside out so that they can birth business expansion, the money recalibration and the devotional love that they're desiring and actually be able to know consciously how to create all of these things within the circuitries of the body instead of outsourcing. And yeah, I'm currently our third cohort is there's a wait list.
Mm.
So, and that wait list is in my link in my bio on Instagram. I'm on Instagram, Juliet underscore Tang. So it's 2 underscores. I'm really easy to find. You can't miss me.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. And I highly recommend your work. You're an incredible woman.
Thank you so much, Lexi. Thank you.
Thank you. You made it to the end of the episode, so now it's time for our snuggly heart breath of the day. Place a hand or both hands, if it's safe to do so, over your heart and take a big breath into your heart center. Open your mouth and let it go. I'm so grateful to have shared this time with you. If you enjoyed this combo, please share with your besties and your fam. And if you're a visual person like me, fly over to YouTube and watch the video. If you want to do a random act of kindness today, please leave a 5-star review so more people in the world can get their heart snuggled. You're helping tremendously when you do this, so thank you so much. And as a gift for doing so, I'll give you my Soften Your Heart Medi that feels like an exhale and a hug from within. When you leave a review and email me the screenshot to heartsnuggles@alivetoenjoy.com, you can also find the email in the show notes and you'll get the free meditation. Sending you the warmest, comfiest hug and lots of unexpected blessings your way. Remember that every single person just wants to be loved. So how can you be loved today?